History of Florencia 13 Gang. Origins and early years. Florencia 13, also known as F13, is a notorious Hispanic street gang that originated in the Florence Firestone neighborhood of South Los Angeles, California, in the early 1950s. Initially formed by Mexican-American youth, the gang began as a loosely organized group of young men who banded together for protection and socialization. Over time, F13 evolved into a more structured and violent organization, engaging in various criminal activities to assert dominance over their territory. The meaning of 13. The 13 in Florencia 13 signifies the gang's allegiance to the Mexican Mafia, also known as La M, a powerful prison gang. The letter M is the 13th letter of the alphabet, symbolizing this connection. This affiliation has provided F13 with a level of protection and influence within the California prison system, as well as on the streets. Expansion and criminal activities. By the 1980s, Florencia 13 had expanded its operations beyond the Florence Firestone area, establishing a presence in other parts of Los Angeles County and beyond. The gang's criminal activities include drug trafficking, extortion, robbery, assault, and murder. F13 is known for its involvement in the distribution of methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin, often collaborating with major drug cartels from Mexico. Rivalries and alliances. Florencia 13 has a long history of violent rivalries with other gangs, particularly African-American gangs such as the East Coast Crips and the Grape Street Crips. These conflicts have often resulted in brutal street violence and have drawn significant attention from law enforcement. Rivalry and truce between Florencia 13 and East Coast Crips. The rivalry between Florencia 13, F13, and the East Coast Crips is one of the most violent and enduring gang conflicts in Los Angeles. This clash between a predominantly Latino gang, Florencia 13, and an African-American gang, East Coast Crips, has resulted in significant violence and tension in the areas where these gangs operate. Roots of the rivalry. Criminal enterprises. The rivalry is rooted in competition for control over lucrative criminal enterprises, including drug trafficking, extortion, and other illicit activities. Ethnic and racial tensions. Ethnic and racial tensions have also played a significant role, with Florencia 13 being predominantly Latino and the East Coast Crips being predominantly African American. Key factors contributing to the rivalry. Territorial disputes. Both gangs vie for control over neighborhoods and drug markets, leading to violent confrontations. Conflict hotspots often emerge where territories overlap. Retaliation and violence. The cycle of violence is fueled by retaliatory attacks, resulting in numerous casualties, including innocent bystanders. Gang politics. Alliances and conflicts with other gangs influence the dynamics between Florencia 13 and the East Coast Crips. The Mexican Mafia's support of Florencia 13 adds complexity to the rivalry. Incarcerated members continue to influence street-level activities. Gang rivalry grows into race war. The feud between Florencia 13 and the East Coast Crips escalated into what many residents call a race war. This was fueled by a reported robbery of a Florencia 13 drug connection by the Crips, though the details remain uncertain. The rivalry has led to targeted violence based on race, significantly affecting community safety and drawing law enforcement attention. Authorities attribute the neighborhood's gang troubles to demographic shifts that have intensified racial tensions. Mexican Mafia strategy. The Mexican Mafia began directing Latino gangs to cease fighting each other and instead focus on taxing drug dealers and pushing African Americans from their neighborhoods. This shift increased tension between Florencia 13 and African American gangs. In 1996, tensions erupted when a Florencia member was killed by a gang associated with the East Coast Crips. Despite temporary peace efforts, the fighting resumed, fueled by competition and racial tensions. Efforts to broker a truce. Efforts to broker peace between Florencia 13 and the East Coast Crips have aimed to reduce violence and improve community safety. Community leaders, former gang members, and organizations dedicated to gang intervention have played crucial roles in mediating peace talks. Law enforcement agencies support these efforts by facilitating safe discussions and monitoring adherence to agreements. Key elements of truces include ceasefire agreements, territorial understandings, and economic opportunities such as job training and educational programs. Impact of the truce. Reduction in violence. Truces often lead to a significant reduction in gang-related violence, improving safety for community members. Community improvement. Reduced violence fosters a greater sense of safety and stability, encouraging economic development and an improved quality of life. Challenges and setbacks. Maintaining trust and addressing underlying social issues are essential for sustaining peace. External influences can destabilize truces. The rivalry between Florencia 13 and the East Coast Crips is a long-standing and violent conflict that has profoundly impacted South Los Angeles communities. Understanding the historical context, key factors, and ongoing challenges is crucial for developing effective strategies to reduce gang violence and improve community safety. The truce between Florencia 13 and the East Coast Crips represents a hopeful step toward reducing gang violence. While challenges remain, the involvement of community leaders, law enforcement, and support programs are crucial in sustaining peace and addressing the root causes of gang conflict. The success of such truces can serve as a model for other gang-ridden areas, demonstrating that dialogue and cooperation can lead to significant reductions in violence and positive changes in communities. Law enforcement crackdowns. In the 2000s, Florencia 13 became a major focus for law enforcement operations aimed at dismantling its leadership and disrupting its criminal enterprises. One of the most significant actions was in 2007 when a federal indictment charged 102 members of F-13 with various crimes, including drug trafficking, murder, and extortion. Dubbed Operation Joker's Wild, it became one of the largest gang sweeps in Los Angeles history. By 2009, 94 of the 102 indicted members had been convicted or pleaded guilty, with 3 awaiting trial, 2 deceased, and 5 remaining fugitives. This extensive operation highlighted the gang's involvement in various violent and criminal activities, marking a significant effort by law enforcement to curb F-13's influence. Historical context and influence. Florencia 13, known as F-13, has a deep-rooted presence in south-central Los Angeles, a region traditionally dominated by African American gangs. Named after Florence Avenue, a major thoroughfare in Los Angeles, the gang has maintained strong ties to the Mexican Mafia since its inception. The connection with the Mexican Mafia has shaped F-13's operations, structure, and influence. Many early members of the Mexican Mafia were recruited from Florencia 13, and the gang has earned a reputation for its ferocity and strategic alliances in battles with black gangs. Notable early members of F-13 and the Mexican Mafia include Gabby Biza, Tablas Castellanos and his brother Babo, Magoo de la Garza, Wine Dog Encinas, Loco Gallegos, Eddie Boy Marquez, Anano Martinez, Smiley Mendoza, Gator Meza, Jaws Moreno, Puppet Paez, Little Man Perez, Tutti Picasso, Chago Ramirez, Smokey Rivera, Sniper Sanchez, Ruben and Victor, Snuffy Brothers, Sanchez, Magoo Velasquez. One of the most infamous members, Trinidad Trini Iglesias, was convicted for the murder of Deputy Gary Saunders in 1971 and was suspected in the shooting of a Huntington Park narcotics officer. After serving his prison term, Iglesias moved out of Los Angeles and was last reported living in Washington or Oregon. The legacy of Braulio Babo Castellanos. Braulio Babo Castellanos, a prominent Florencia 13 and Mexican Mafia member, passed away from stomach cancer last week after being granted compassionate release. Castellanos, who spent 35 years in prison for 2 murders, continued to influence the gang from behind bars. He outlined strategies to ensure Florencia 13's survival, emphasizing the importance of leadership across different age groups within the gang. Born in Mexicali, Mexico, Castellanos moved to Los Angeles as an infant. His nickname Babo was derived from his younger brother's mispronunciation of his first name. He graduated from Andrew Jackson High School in East LA and worked various jobs, including as a liquor store clerk, auto mechanic, and factory press operator. Castellanos' criminal activities escalated when he was convicted of robbery at age 21, which he claimed programmed me for violence. In 1981, a bar fight on New Year's Eve led to Castellanos stabbing and killing 2 people. Convicted of second-degree murder, he was sentenced to 21 years to life. Castellanos lived under severe restrictions in Pelican Bay's Security Housing Unit, SHU, for 25 years, yet managed to control Florencia 13's operations from 700 miles away. His brother Arturo, also incarcerated for murder, was a significant figure within the gang and the Mexican Mafia. Castellanos' influence on the Mexican Mafia. Despite being less outspoken than his brother Arturo, Braulio Castellanos was considered a silent yet powerful force within Florencia 13. He was instrumental in the gang's operations, even as prosecutors brought indictments against numerous members. In 2015, a hunger strike led by inmates, including Arturo Castellanos, prompted changes in the state's handling of prisoners in isolation units, giving Mexican Mafia members more direct contact with their subordinates. Braulio Castellanos' writings from prison revealed internal conflicts within the Mexican Mafia and his vision for equitable distribution of territory and resources among members. He criticized the concentration of power and funds among a few individuals and advocated for a return to traditional practices where each member claimed only their local area. Castellanos' strategic insights and leadership significantly shaped the gang's operations and influence. The secretive control and operations. Running a criminal organization while locked inside one of America's most secure prisons requires imagination, cunning, and ruthlessness. It also demands a firm set of rules and a way to impose them on operatives on the streets, often violent and unruly gang members. A secret letter allegedly sent from an inmate at Pelican Bay State Prison in Northern California to members of Florencia 13 details a covert network that has enriched the state's most powerful prison gang, the Mexican Mafia. The note, originally written in tiny script on a small scrap of paper known as a kite, was smuggled out of Pelican Bay, recopied, and then distributed to street gang members, according to federal prosecutors. The letter outlines rules, or reglas, drawn up by Mexican Mafia members for associates operating on the streets, including governance of street gangs and their subgroups, with the election of a president and vice president by majority votes, organization and taxation of drug sales, prostitution, and other illegal activities, with a percentage going to gang leaders behind bars, procedures for settling disputes, authorizing assaults and murders, and punishing snitches and sex offenders. We are forewarning everyone to cautiously respect these reglas and know there's no second chance, reads the message, allegedly written by Arturo Castellanos. We are Ameros, Mexican Mafia members, and we expect that these reglas are followed and respected by all true South Side Florencianos and Florencianas. Hunger strike and advocacy. Earlier in the summer, Castellanos and 3 other inmates organized a 2-month hunger strike over conditions at Pelican Bay, where they and hundreds of other men had been held in special windowless cells, usually alone, for more than a decade. The action drew international attention and plaudits from a host of civil and human rights groups, including the ACLU and Amnesty International, who argued that conditions at Pelican Bay were unconstitutional and amounted to slow torture. To his supporters, Castellanos is a relentless campaigner for prisoner rights who has eschewed a history of violence to help coordinate peaceful protests behind bars. Leaders of the hunger strike, including Castellanos, only agreed to call off the protest after California lawmakers promised hearings and possible legislation to address complaints about prison gang policy and isolation units. State corrections officials, however, argue that the severe restrictions are necessary to curtail gang communications and allege that the protest leaders have a hidden agenda to strengthen the hand of criminal groups that control drug and extortion rackets behind bars and on the streets. Federal indictments and ongoing influence. In August, federal prosecutors in Los Angeles named Castellanos in an indictment alleging a host of narcotics, firearms, and fraud offenses, all carried out from his cell at Pelican Bay. Prosecutors alleged Castellanos was a Mexican Mafia member and undisputed leader of Florencia 13 and its associated cliques, receiving payments from the gang's illegal activities into his inmate trust account. The indictment cites rules allegedly written by Castellanos from his prison cell that established leadership positions within F-13's territory in the Florence Firestone area of Los Angeles. These shot callers were then ordered to coordinate the illegal distribution of drugs and other criminal activities, to ensure that extortionate taxes were collected, and otherwise to oversee their respective portions of the gang's territory, such as by resolving disputes both among F-13 gang members and associates and with members of other Los Angeles gangs, the indictment states. Turf battles and racial violence. Other edicts allegedly issued by Castellanos guided Florencia 13 into a turf battle against rival gangs, triggering a wave of racial violence against African Americans. More than 20 people were killed in these conflicts. Prosecutors allege Castellanos continued to discuss gang business in meetings with visitors at Pelican Bay as recently as 2011 and in the aftermath of an earlier hunger strike. A separate indictment released in August alleges Mexican Mafia members attempted to form an alliance with operatives from a powerful Mexican drug cartel, with approval from leaders at Pelican Bay. In a letter released by inmate advocates, Castellanos denounced the federal investigation as a setup and described Florencia 13 as his old childhood street gang. Despite the accusations, he remained a significant influence within the gang and the broader Mexican Mafia network. Influence and legacy. Florencia 13's influence extends beyond Los Angeles, with cells and affiliated cliques in various parts of the United States and even internationally. The gang's adaptability and expansion have cemented its reputation as one of the most resilient and dangerous street gangs. They have connections with major African American drug distributors and Colombian and Mexican drug cartels. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, DEA, and ATF have targeted Florencia 13 for racially motivated attacks on African Americans. Court testimony revealed that F-13 members have targeted African Americans purely based on race. The gang has also had violent confrontations with the East Coast Crips, sparked by drug thefts and other disputes. At times, Florencia 13 leaders ordered the killings of East Coast Crip members, with the Mexican Mafia putting a green light on the East Coast Crips. Florencia 13 has been involved in high-profile violent incidents, including a shooting at the Fashion Place Mall in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a deadly shooting at KC Tequila in Kansas City, Kansas. These events highlight the gang's far-reaching influence and the ongoing challenges faced by law enforcement agencies in combating their activities. Today, Florencia 13 remains a significant concern for law enforcement agencies. Ongoing efforts to combat the gang's activities include community outreach, prevention programs, and targeted operations. Despite these efforts, the gang remains active and follows the Mexican Mafia's directives, continuing to engage in violent conflicts and criminal activities. Florencia 13's enduring legacy is a testament to the complex dynamics of gang culture in Southern California. From its roots in the Florence Firestone neighborhood to its current status as a major criminal organization, F-13's history reflects broader trends in gang evolution, including the impact of prison gangs, the role of drug trafficking, and the persistent challenge of gang violence.